You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sara Correnti.
It is typically Mondays are mental health Mondays, but we're going to make it Wellness Monday, but that doesn't have alliteration. So
no, it doesn't.
Healthy Mondays, okay. that doesn't have alliteration either. We're all about alliteration here on The Coffee Hour, but we have a great guest, great topic for you today, and quite a full lineup today. We've got multiple guests, so it's kind of exciting. Healthy stuff. And when we're talking about healthy stuff, who else do we go to then? Concordia Plans and our great friend Sara Correnti there. We're going to talk with her and some friends in just a moment. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us today, Sara Correnti. She's manager for health and welfare, member wellness products at Concordia Plan Services. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Thanks for having me back.
And you brought along a crew with you today.
I brought friends.
You brought friends.
Not that you aren't my friends. I just have other friends.
More friends.
More friends.
Dr. Jeff Stanley, medical director for Virta. Dr. Stanley, thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to chat with y'all.
And also Bonnie Parker, who is an LCMS employee here in communications at the International Center and a Virta client. Bonnie, thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour.
Thanks for allowing me to join you and your friends. I appreciate it.
So June is a check-in time, right?
Yeah. We feel it's a great month to check in.
Mm-hmm.
Really, any month is a good month, but we want to take time, middle of the year. It's usually easier to think of health and wellness at the beginning of the year. But, when you have that summer break, when, you're going through those transitions like school year to summer breaks or whatever it is that's going on, it's a good time. Just kind of do a little recalibration assessment, see what's happening in your health.
So we're going to talk about Virta today, which we've talked about briefly before. We get to share a great story from a pastor in the past about his experience with Virta. But what is Virta? Why is it important for us to learn about it today? And we're going to share Bonnie's great story in a little bit.
Well, we have a variety of health and wellness programs that we offer to help in the management of different disease states or even to prevent them. But Virta is a more unique offering in that they actually have the capabilities through their program to reverse diabetes, which when we talk about reversing it, we're talking about a little bit beyond just the control. Controlling your blood sugar is going to help to lessen the damage that happens to a lot of the really sensitive parts in our bodies, like our eyes and our heart and nerves and all that kind of stuff. But the impact that Virta can have for those that are struggling with great diabetic control has been really profound so far within our population. So we would like people to look into maybe it's Virta or maybe it's just any of our health and wellness programs this year, this month. So yeah.
So
I was going to say, Dr. Stanley can probably tell you a whole lot more about Virta.
Dr. Stanley, what do we need to know about diabetes, especially for people who maybe aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, so what we see with type 2 diabetes is that it's generally thought to be sort of a chronic progressive condition. And oftentimes people will not even know that they have type 2 diabetes initially. And then over time, some of the pretty bad complications of diabetes can arise. So, someone may have diabetes for 5 or 10 years, and then they can run into some serious issues, even up to blindness or amputations or kidney failure. And it's one of the things that is nice about it is that by making a lifestyle change, you can actually have the opportunity to reverse a lot of the damage from diabetes and to avoid some of those complications in the long term.
Now we're talking about type 2 diabetes. Can you give us a quick a distinction between type 1 and type 2 diabetes and why this program is specifically for type 2?
Absolutely. So type 1 diabetes is quite different, and it tends to be generally kind of earlier onset. A lot of times people will develop type 1 diabetes before the age of 10 or in their teenage years. And it's an autoimmune condition where basically the body kind of attacks the pancreas, and the cells of the pancreas stop being able to make their own insulin. And it's a life-threatening condition. And before the invention of insulin, people had a very short lifespan after they were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And so people with type 1 diabetes will need to be on injectable insulin for the rest of their life. Versus with type 2 diabetes, again, it's more of a chronic progressive illness in general, where people will actually become more resistant to the effects of insulin. So basically, their pancreas is still making insulin, but what happens is they become resistant to it, and their body has to make more and more of the insulin in order to keep blood glucose normal. And at a certain point, it basically kind of can't keep up. And at that point, people are then diagnosed with diabetes, and then need to generally be put on an increasing number of medications over time in order to help control those blood glucose numbers.
Is there a correlation between obesity and type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, there's a very strong correlation. It generally, what will happen is people will struggle with obesity for years before developing type 2 diabetes. One thing that's interesting, though, is it's not 100%. There are definitely quite a few people who can develop type 2 diabetes while having normal weight or even underweight. And that can sometimes be based on genetics. So people who have a strong family history, certain ethnic groups, people of Asian descent can have a higher risk of diabetes without having obesity at the same time.
What are some of the challenges that people face when they're dealing with both obesity and type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, I see it, again and again in my practice, both when I was a primary care physician prior to joining Virta, and then in my work as a doc at Virta. And what we see is that these are things that affect people every day. When it comes to obesity, it can be, unfortunately, a lot of shame and stigma. People will, sometimes see this as a failure of willpower to maintain normal weight. Or, people will struggle with things like arthritis, pain in their knees, pain in their joints, just difficulty with kind of everyday tasks. And, what I've found over time is that obesity or type 2 diabetes are really not the patient's fault. These are things where our food environment is really difficult for people to eat in a healthy way and to avoid some of the foods that can lead to diabetes and obesity. And that was a major change in my practice, is when I came to that realization, like a lot of other docs have, that, this is a disease like any other, and people struggling with obesity and diabetes deserve the same respect and support that people dealing with any disease do. And so that's why it's been really inspirational to be able to help people with these conditions to improve their health.
Sara, how have you seen, or what challenges have you seen in your work with Concordia Plans, people who are dealing with type 2 diabetes?
I've seen it here. I've seen it when I was in the clinical world myself, that people struggle, like Dr. Stanley was saying, from a physical aspect, but there's also that aspect of how it touches all the other parts of our wellness that we talk about. So when we think about like the financial impact and looking at what insulin costs, what all of the doctor visits cost, there's a real situation out there for a lot of people that have to choose between refilling their prescriptions or food. Mm-hmm. And so then what do? They maybe just try to stretch their insulin longer. And then just how is that impacting, the social elements, their vocational wellness, all of these different parts are truly impacted. I saw it before. I continue to see it and hear it at Concordia Plans and the members that we serve, which is unfortunate, but also fortunate that we're able to provide programs for our health plan members like Virta, so that a lot of those barriers, those struggles are taken away and actually swung to the other direction and greatly improved because of programs and the support that people get from programs like Virta.
So both you and Dr. Stanley, you both have mentioned there's an emotional aspect, even alluded to a psychological aspect and cultural aspects to this that are a part of our lifestyle and food. All of those things are kind of connected. It seems very complex. How does Dr. Stanley, how does support and accountability play a role in someone's attempts to, and even success to address obesity or reversing type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, I think that the support in an ongoing fashion is probably the single most important thing in terms of helping people to make a lifestyle change. And so, briefly for folks who aren't aware, our work at Virta, we basically use kind of a fully virtual physician supervised diabetes clinic. But we use health coaches and physicians to help work with patients to adopt a low carbohydrate eating plan. And what I've found over time, so again, when I was a primary care doctor, I was pretty convinced by the science showing that restricting certain carbohydrates was beneficial for obesity and diabetes. But the missing piece of it was the ability to support people on a daily basis and kind of meet them where they were. So I would give people advice, I would give people handouts and pamphlets, and they might see a dietitian once or twice. But what I found is that they would come back, and 3 to 6 months later, life happened and they would struggle with continuing the lifestyle change. And so what we found is that, through using our app and through having a health coach that really knows our patients well on a personal basis, that we're able to offer that ongoing support. And sometimes it's the nuts and bolts of, don't drink soda and avoid these sources of sugar. But oftentimes it's also, what do you do if you have a social gathering? Or, if you have an unsupportive family member or spouse, how can you adapt things so that somebody can still be successful? And then also understanding that it's never a linear path to success, right? So people are always going to have slip ups and issues that happen, but the important thing is getting back on track when the time is right and when they're able to. So that's been the big, huge shift that I've seen, where I was trying to do this sort of on my own with patients, and having our coaches able to help and able to intervene and support our patients every step of the way has been just a total game changer for me.
So it's not a Lone Ranger approach by any means.
It's not a, here's your map, get to the top of the mountain, good luck. No, it's you have your own tour guide with you to get you there safely.
And we have a very straightforward personal story we get to share here in just a little bit. We're going to do that. We're going to share Bonnie's story with Virta here in just a moment on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sara Golseth.
You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to cuw.edu.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sara Golseth.
And we are talking about Virta today. We're talking with Dr. Jeff Stanley. He's medical director for Virta, and Sara Correnti, manager, health and welfare and member wellness products for Concordia Plans. And also in studio, Bonnie Parker. And she's just one of the sweet coworkers here at the LCMS International Center. She serves in LCMS communications, but also a Virta client, and here to share her personal story. Now, Bonnie, what is it that tell us your story? What prompted you to consider Virta to help you reach your goals?
Well, my family could have been the poster family for type 2 diabetes. My mother had it. My brother had it. My father got it late in life. And my primary care physician had really positioned me to understand at some point in time, the other shoe would drop. I'd have type 2 diabetes and I would have it for the rest of my life. And sure enough, went for a regular visit ta-da, there it was. And for 15 years, he tried, and I saw a couple other doctors, and they, of course, treated my type 2 diabetes, knowing that for the rest of my life, I would be treating type 2 diabetes. And that was just the norm. I mean, pretty typical, I think, of some of the things that, Dr. Stanley expressed. And at the end of that time period, we had managed to manage my type 2 diabetes a bit, but it was still really out of control.
Mm-hmm. So what prompted you to then look to Virta to try to get it under control?
Interestingly enough, at the end of 15 years, I was on 3 non-generic medications for my diabetes. And there'd been, I think, a change in our plan. And when I went to order my first 90-day supply of one of those medications, the cost was exorbitant and it freaked me out. And I actually mentioned it to a coworker who happened to sit on our wellness committee, who said, hey, go look at the Concordia Plan Services website. I think you'll be pleased. And there were 4 options, 3 of which really were about treating. And then this Virta thing where you could reverse your type 2 diabetes. And being the renegade I've always been, I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. So I expressed interest and I went through the process. And of course, my primary care physician, being the standard doc we always see, was not exactly supportive and said, you can't do that forever. Your carbohydrate, all your tests and your lipids, and oh my gosh, you're just going to be a heart attack. But go ahead and try it out if you want.
Okay.
So I did, and here we are. And he's retired since. He did us all a favor.
Oh goodness.
So what was helpful? How did Virta help you make the changes and attain those goals that you were aiming for?
I think the key program structure does require client buy-in and a willingness to make behavioral changes. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to do that, the support, you're really driven every day by a coach. I have the most amazing coach, Virta Health coach, who's actually based in Denver. And we're in touch pretty much on a daily basis even now, and a Virta physician. And the two of them, along with thousands of resources, whether it's recipes, blogs, the app, the Virta community within the app, are every time I think I have figured something out and I have a question, somebody will say, well, did you check this resource? Oh my gosh, I missed a resource. They're too numerous to possibly absorb them all. There's videos, and it just is amazing. And they're all extremely well done, well prepared, and concise, get to the point. And that has really been it's been an amazing experience for me. I call Virta the best self-care program on the planet because it addresses not just the physical part of me, but my mental and emotional health and my entire life. I'm healthier now than I think I've ever been. And I'm just extremely fortunate. And in fact, my A1C is where it needs to be and so on. But as recently as yesterday, I went for an eye exam, my annual, and a doctor I'd seen once before who, when I saw him, I talked about Virta and he took it all in. And yesterday with my eye exam, he was all credit to Virta. My vision in the last 2 years has actually improved. Wow. And they always do the test for macular degeneration for diabetic patients. And over the last 2 years, the pigmentation in my eyes has actually improved. And he immediately credited Virta for those improvements because of the steps I've taken and the behavioral changes I've endured and taken on. So it's all good. I'm just blessed to be able to participate in all this and really thankful.
That is amazing that you've been able to do that with all of the support. And making lifestyle changes is not an easy thing to do. And you really do have to have some gumption to stick with it. There's generally a learning curve that comes along with making such a large life change and being able to make those behavioral changes. That is really, really incredible. How would you describe the changes in your life that you've had, the things that you've gone through in order to get to this place now?
Well, obviously, a part of this, and one part a lot of people focus on too much, is changing how you eat. Mm-hmm. And that's a much healthier lifestyle for me than I'd ever experienced in the past. But again, the support that you get is so there that unless you're just really stubborn and digging your heels and you're just not going to do it, you'd be insane. And I think for me, I was fortunate because it was almost instant gratification in that about 30 days into the program, I was off all 3 of my medications, wow, which was a real motivator for me. 2 months into the program, however, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I thought, oh, they're going to kick me out of the program because I'm going to skew the numbers. I'm going to be a failure. And what an ego to think one person could have that much impact. Oh, please. And of course, fortunately, Dr. Stanley is my Virta doctor, and he talked me off the ledge and actually executed and asked for video chat. And we sat and he looked at my pathology and we talked through it. And he assured me, you're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're here for you, and you'll be able to make this happen for yourself. And so even with the bump in the road, I've had all the support I needed and all the science, and I'm very amazed by all the clinical studies and the science that are behind Virta. It's real and it works. And without the support, I probably would not be where I am today, but that made a huge difference for me.
Dr. Stanley, Bonnie mentioned earlier that when she shared about, she looked at plans or options, and she looked at Virta and saw it as, well, as she said, she's a renegade. And so because it used the word reverse, she was all on board because she wanted to try something that was different. But she pointed out that some were skeptical, including her own general physician was skeptical about the program. Why would some be skeptical about a program like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we've seen, and I kind of mentioned this before, but this kind of accepted advice that diabetes is this chronic and irreversible condition, and people are just going to continue to kind of get worse over time. Unfortunately, that is what most people in medicine kind of believe at this point. And unfortunately, also, that's most of what they've seen in their clinical experience, that most patients with diabetes do tend to get worse over time. They do tend to need more and more medications. So, they maybe have never seen one of their patients get off of insulin before. And what we've found is that in working with whether it's, physicians or patients who might be skeptical because they've tried every diet change under the sun and not been able to stick with it, is that, the proof does tend to be in the pudding. So once they start to see these results, people are really intrigued and interested. And, one patient is kind of an anecdote, but when somebody starts to see 3, 4, 5 or more of their patients get off of insulin and normalize their glucose and reverse their diabetes, then you can kind of change some hearts and minds. So it's definitely a process, but I think that, I think as Bonnie spoke to, that this idea of diabetes reversal, this idea that it's not a life sentence, really speaks to people, and that we're able to give people the support to do it. And there's always this concern that it is going to be too much of a lifestyle change, or that that people can't do it. But we really work to personalize it. And some people need to cut down their carbohydrates very low. Other people have a little bit more wiggle room based on their genetics and their history. But it's something where people oftentimes really, they surprise themselves, they surprise their doctor, they surprise their family, because they're able to achieve something that they couldn't do before.
Bonnie, what made this program successful for you? It was a big lifestyle change, it sounds like, but you did it, and you're still doing well. What was it that made it successful for you?
I think the fact that it addressed me as an entire person. It didn't focus only on type 2 diabetes. It really is, like I said, the best self-care program. Very often in the app, in community, I see people who are focused on, I haven't lost enough weight, or I haven't done, and I, try politely to say, it's not really, step back. Wouldn't you like to be healthier? And I think for me, we do that vitality online age. And so I had done one a year prior, and I came back the next year, and it was older than my real age. And I came back after starting Virta the next year, and I was younger in my vitality age score. I'm so excited. So I think there are a lot of motivating factors. I'm pretty much into instant gratification, so the losing my meds was great. But the ongoing support and the fact that my coach is huge in the emotional and the mental and the support, and she's there to talk more. She and I talk more about, how do you really be the man in the arena? How do you be that person who's vulnerable, that takes risks, instead of the person that stands back and harasses the people who do? And how do you address being that whole person and being a better person than you were?
Sara, how can Concordia Plan members find out more about Virta, see if it's a good match for them?
So if they go to our website, we have what is called the Health Connector. You can go in and answer a series of questions. And based on whatever your health history is, where your readiness to change kind of lies right now, it'll point you to a program that would be best for you, possibly Virta. Another good way to start would be what Bonnie was saying. She went to her doctor, got her blood work done, just like, where am I? Like, check in. So #be like Bonnie, just go start, check in with your doctor. Maybe it's just using your free biometrics through Vitality. All of those things you can find on the wellness landing page that are on Concordia Plan's main website, if you look under like the member services. Just start wherever is easiest for you, whether it's the doctor, your blood work, something, figure out where you're at, and then look to see where it is that you're looking to go. And kind of with what Bonnie was saying, I'll just add that it can seem so overwhelming to embark on something so big and think, I can't ever maintain, some sort of radical lifestyle change. But I recently heard someone say that their biggest advice with any health journey is about falling in love with the lifestyle. So fall in love with the parts that are playing into whatever's making you healthier, whether it's financially, mentally, physically, like Bonnie was saying, and then the results will come, whether it's controlling your blood sugar, losing weight, whatever it is that you're going for. So focus more on the everyday and what you're doing. And in this case, Virta was that perfect fit for Bonnie. So way to go, Bonnie. I'm so proud of you. I'm so thankful Dr. Stanley talked you off the ledge at that crucial moment. Perfect example of how Virta shows up for the members. But yeah, there is something for everyone. Just get out there, get that checkup, check in with yourself, and figure out what it is that could be that next step for you and your health.
Very good. Very good. I've learned a lot today, and this is very helpful. Thank you so much to our guest today, Sara Correnti with Concordia Plans. Sara, thanks so much for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Jeff Stanley, Medical Director for Virta. Dr. Stanley, thanks so much for being our guest.
No, thank you.
And Bonnie Parker, Virta client and coworker here at the LCMS International Center. Thanks so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks for including me. I appreciate it. You've
been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support The Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.